Speaking freedom, giving you the answers to be free. Be free.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's performance is about to begin.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Speaking Freedom TV. Today's episode of Journey to Freedom. I'm sorry, this isn't a Journey to Freedom. This is Life of a Veteran, a sub part to Journey to Freedom. Today's Life of a Veteran episode features Ryan. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a veteran of both the Marine Corps and the Air National Guard. I did 5 years in the Marine Corps as a Russian linguist. I did another 6 years in the Air Guard working intelligence support to U-2s, Predators, F-16s, and F-22s. I also did 16 years in D.C. as a contractor working counterterrorism and counterproliferation. I've been working as a hypnotist for almost 5 years now, full-time for about 4.5.
Where do you do your work as a hypnotist?
Everything's online. I started my business in April of 2020. So, of course, I couldn't have a physical office back then. So I've just been doing everything over Zoom. Yeah.
Okay, so you said you were in the Marines and the National Guard.
Yep.
What made you decide to go into the military?
Primarily getting the hell out of Kansas, to be entirely honest. I grew up in Kansas in the 70s and 80s. I've got a fairly high IQ, and also turns out that I've got autism. Didn't find that until I was almost 48. That wasn't a surprise. Actually, everything made sense. It's like, oh, got it. Now this is what it is. But Kansas was just like, it was never the place for me. And went to college. That didn't go too well. So after about a year or two, just trying to figure all that stuff out and just really getting nowhere, I'm like, I have got to get out. This is not the place for me. I got to get out. So joined the Marines. Took the ASVAB, scored really high. They said, you need to go take this other test. So I went down. And I did one called the DLAB, the Defense Language Aptitude Battery, which is like 4 hours of nonsense, just trying to figure out how good you are about like picking up syntax and grammar and all that sort of stuff. And that's what they sent me out to do Russian. Spent about a year and a half learning that. Did pretty well at that. And it was very much the situation where that space was a place where I could really apply like my intelligence and my problem solving skills and kind of my approach to the world of figuring stuff out, understanding systems and taking those apart and all those kinds of innate skills and really apply it in a way that I can't in any other way. The intelligence space has always been like the most beautiful fit for me for a very, very long time. And being in the military, you get those opportunities that you would never get in any other way.
Mm-hmm. So you seem so soft-spoken. Now, I don't want to say soft-spoken, but very mild-tempered. How did you manage in the military with and this could be something that has developed now versus how you were earlier on, but you just seem so like zen and calm.
Well, that piece has been definitely a much more recent development. 2019 to 2022, 2023, I was on a huge healing self-improvement run. Being undiagnosed autism, like that's a rough space,
Mm-hmm.
And 2021 was really, I was like, I don't care what the heck I have to do. I'm gonna do whatever the hell I need to fix this thing because I'm freaking done. I am tired of suffering. I'm tired of not doing this, right? And that kind of attitude of just like willingness to attack problems and just go at it is very much something I developed in the Marine Corps and has served me incredibly well. I will not say that my time in the Marines or the Air National Guard was covered in glory. I never really did a whole lot of really cool stuff. And being autistic and also turns out bipolar, it's tough navigating those spaces, right? So I was never a particularly good Marine. I was never a particularly good airman, but I was really good at what I did. And that whole Zen-like calm came from doing all this work on myself and sorting out all these deeper issues around identity and how to process emotions and so forth and so on. But yeah, man, it was the emotional stuff, being bipolar, that always had a huge impact. Going to those different extremes. Anger was always something that kind of was an issue for me controlling that. Growing up emotionally volatile household, and we get in like 3, 4, 5 hour long arguments, me and my mom. Like it was just after like once I started hitting those teenage years and was able to kind of push back, like we would butt heads 100%, like World War III, 100%. And that I wouldn't say ability, but tendency that I built of just like, I will just go head to head and I don't care. I'll go head with anybody, right? Later on, when I was in the intelligence space, I was working basically supporting and advising a bunch of like senior decision makers in these different organizations. And I can remember a couple of times where I just went at it because they were wrong. It's like, no, you're going to screw this up. No, you're wrong. And I just went head to head with them and would often win because I'm just like too stubborn, too stubborn to lose, And that has its upsides and its downsides, right? Because definitely, like, I got myself fired a couple of times and moved on a couple of times. It's office politics is not my freaking forte at all.
Right.
But at the same time, that tenacity and just willingness, like, I do not care. I will not quit. I am too stubborn to lose. Pulled me through that personal journey. Like I said, I've got bipolar. That was a surprise. Like, it took me about a year and a half to get my mind right after that. And that was a rough ride, but that just sheer, I refuse to frickin' lose was the thing that got me through it.
I think that so I have in more recent years said that the way my brain works, I think that I might have been on the spectrum myself because I'm very analytical, I'm very exact, like, no, this is what it is. If this is what
Yep.
it is, then, and I can also identify with you saying it's often viewed as combative, but you're not really being combative. You're just not a pushover. You're not going to allow people to treat you or do you any type of way. And from my own military experience, I definitely had a few run-ins where I wasn't necessarily wrong, but being a woman and being a black woman and then being in the military, oftentimes facing men, you're going to be made to have an attitude, be insubordinate, just all of the worst case scenarios versus, hey, did this soldier have a point? Like,
Yeah.
was this soldier actually wrong, or did we just not like that the soldier was saying? And I'm talking about even when I think about being in Iraq, and before we convoyed from Kuwait to Iraq, we had our, briefings. And in the briefings, I personally had talked to a cousin that had just left Iraq before we got there. I mean, they had a going away party, and my cousin's like, hey, cuz, this is what you do.
That's what's up.
Yeah, like, this is the real. They might tell you one thing, but this is what I know. And one of the things that we were told, well, she told me, is that if they attack your convoy, don't stop. If you are in the middle vehicles, you got to keep going. So when I told them that in the briefing, everybody looked at me like, oh my gosh, she's going to abandon her unit. And I'm like, y'all, no, I am like, like, the
This
goal
is
is
how
to
you do it.
stop everybody. So why would you stop when you're supposed to keep going? I literally was threatened with an Article 15. And later on that night, nobody apologized, but it turns out that I was right. And
Ain't
it's
that how it
literally,
always works, though?
I mean, you would think that it would be like, you know what, y'all, we were wrong, just because, one, because it helps grow the morale of the unit, because if
Sure.
the leadership can say, hey, we made a mistake and we should not have ostracized her for what she knew. We should have listened and then kind of checked to see what was being said, and the validity of it.
Yep.
But I said all that to say I totally understand when it comes to most of the times it's not wanting to be right, but desiring structure, like the right structure, the actual way it's supposed to be type of thing, versus people kind of doing whatever they want.
Yeah.
Um,
And in a lot of ways, like, it was either there were other political things at play, like
mhm,
interagency stuff or like interdepartment stuff. And I'm
mhm,
like, okay, yes, I understand this. And we can't let
mhm,
this go. Right?
mhm,
This needs to be done. I understand there's other stuff. Like, no, this needs to be done. We got to do it this way. Otherwise, all these downstream effects. And like, this is just
mhm,
not, you told me make this happen. This is how we make this happen. You don't want
mhm,
this to happen? Cool. Tell me this doesn't have to happen. But otherwise, you
mhm.
told me to take you from point A to point B. I'm going to do that.
Right.
Even if I have to drag you there kicking and screaming.
Right.
Right? You told me to, you don't want me to do that? Cool. Fine. Do not give me a mission if you don't want to accomplish. I'm sorry. That's just how that works.
I mean, and
Right?
if, because if you give me a mission then you've told me in all of the training leading up to this point that carry out the mission, complete the mission.
Yes.
So by
Mission.
any
Yeah.
means necessary as well.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Was it mission accomplishment over troop welfare?
Yeah,
Dude, like
in most
just get that
cases,
freaking thing done.
until it really made sense.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. That's the thing is like you being in the military, like it gives you a certain approach of like some things just have to be done.
Hmm.
This just has to be done. It doesn't matter how much it sucks. It doesn't matter whose ego get hurt. It doesn't matter hurt feelings. Like none of that stuff matters. Get this done.
Hmm.
Once it's done, we can have the other stuff. You can
Right,
deal with the other
and
stuff
we
on the
can
back
care
end.
about the logistics of it right now. What is the
Get
goal
it
here?
done. Get
And
it
I
done.
think that that's what makes military people and veterans so much different than civilians because, well, majority of military people, because you still have some that don't quite
You got the
get
10%.
there. But
Yep.
that's what makes us different. When I look at the differences of the people that I knew that were in the military versus those that were not, most of it is the get it done. We're not going to shortstop. We're going to do it by any means necessary, and then we're more than likely team oriented. So it's not like we're just trying to do what's best for us. We have a bigger picture mindset going on for us.
Yeah. Well, we had this thing we said in the Marine Corps of like there's always the 10%. Like there's that 10% of people in an organization that just screw everything up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, a lot of them tend to be at the top.
Right.
You got your
Right.
problem children you got to deal with, but like a lot of times, like man, what is it? People at the top who know how to play the game really well,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that's what they're doing. They're trying to play that game,
Mm-hmm.
get ahead organizationally, all this other stuff, whatever it is, and they don't actually care about anything else,
Mm-hmm.
right? They do everything else in order to play the game, right?
And just
And
for the
that's
game.
and just for the game, and that's where like so many problems come in because they're not willing to listen, they're not willing to take feedback, they're not willing to be accountable, they're not willing to do like no, it's like they're just playing the politics game, and it's just so freaking frustrating. But I'm really kind of hopeful because you got Hexeth coming in there as Secretary of Defense. That's going to be a huge game changer. Man, that's going to be big. I can't wait. I saw his interview with Sean Ryan. I don't know if you watched the Sean Ryan show.
No, I don't.
Oh man, guy's phenomenal. Former Navy SEAL, was in GRS for the CIA, doing paramilitary stuff for the CIA for a long time. Phenomenal interviewer, phenomenal podcaster. Gets on some really amazing guests. Had Tulsi Gabbard, had Donald Trump. Had Hexeth, has all kinds of really good people. Phenomenal podcast if you're into veteran stuff at all, or if you're into like stuff at all. Like he's a great interviewer.
I'm definitely gonna have to check it out. I definitely also was going to ask you, how do you see the changes right now? Personally, I know a lot of people don't like talking politics, and I am probably one of the rare few who is not against anything that's going on right now, just because I understand the logic of sometimes you have to clear house in order to build things back the way that they need to be. And not only that, a lot of things are masked as being helpful, but they're not really productive and helpful in the way that they may have been designed or intended to the thought process behind what it would turn into or what it should be. And
Man,
go ahead.
I've got a lot of thoughts on this. One of the things that I always find interesting is, growing up in 70s, 80s, 90s and everything else, like racism really wasn't a thing. It really wasn't. Sexism wasn't really a thing. It really wasn't. Nobody's really talking about this stuff. Were there still issues? Yes, but it's such a small fraction, you know. But all of a sudden, it blew up into the biggest issue. Why? There's this beautiful freaking graph or image on Google where they took a look at the incidence or the frequency of things like racism, sexism, and so forth and so on in all these major news publications. And it's like kind of low, kind of low, kind of low. Then like 2012, 2013, just freaking hockey sticks in the freaking stratosphere, right? Just out of freaking nowhere, just blows up. And I'm like, as an intel guy, I'm like, that's deliberate. It's like, that is not natural. That is a deliberately designed, deliberately driven thing. Somebody decided to slap that narrative in there and just hockey stick out of nothing, to be the dominant narrative. And like conspiracy theory, me, Democrats, right? Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're wired and all that stuff, and that's what they've been hammering the crap out of, right? I'm like, okay, why? Well, you had Occupy Wall Street,
Mm-hmm.
2010, 2011, big thing, right? 99% versus 1%. Now, the 2012 election was Barack Obama versus Mitt Romney.
Mm-hmm.
Mitt Romney is the freaking card carrying member of the 1%, the perfect personification of it. So that narrative was useful to beat him down. But as soon
Mm-hmm.
as that was done, well, now that those guns are aimed at, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like a guy got to get that out of the way. Cool. Sexism, trans stuff, all that sort of shit blows up and everything, right? And so just that cynical leverage of this stuff to keep us distracted and keep us fighting over stuff that just doesn't matter. The
Mm-hmm.
globalist solar thing was just like, what the hell are you people doing? Just sheer corruption, right? Sheer arrogance of we can run the stuff and we can control you, we can puppet you. The censorship stuff that's been blowing up over the past several years, like, oh
Almost,
man,
I would say about 95% is what can we do to keep you in an uproar, in a state of fear, and keep you so fogged, you're mentally fogged by drama to where you don't even realize your presence in this world, or um have the inability to be purposeful. Even when I think about the AI narrative and the push for it, I don't think the AI taking over a lot of the menial jobs is a bad thing, because guess what? The reason a lot of people struggle is because we've been created to work, like be workers. And not it's nothing wrong with having a job, but having purposeful um activity is way better than being worker bees, where you're just, fashion and programmed to just go 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 go. So I think that a lot of these things will help people be human again, but I definitely agree with you as far as um there was a lot of things that meant nothing before. It was just like, I don't want to say the boys will be boys type of thing, but a lot of things that people say are sexual harassment, or some of the stuff is just flirting, is people being nice and being mistaken. Now there are instances and scenarios in which people
oh yeah,
are doing way too much.
yeah,
I've definitely, when I was in the military, approached by different people that was like, whoa, you're not supposed to be here, and you know that I know that you know that you ain't supposed to be here. Matter of fact, everybody to just watch you walk and come into my room know that you're not supposed to be here. So what are you doing here?
yep,
So there are, like, the same 10% rule applies,
yep,
but a lot of things, I think that we've come into an oversensitive society where
yeah.
just because a
Well,
person don't like it, now you gotta no. Unfortunately, there's a lot of uncomfortable truths. There's a lot of things that may
yeah,
not be true, but are still narratives that need to be heard and understood so that you can understand the world around you. But we've
yeah,
come to a very ultra sensitive place to where the moment somebody you say or do anything that somebody doesn't like, it's all automatically you're a hater, you're evil, it's always,
yeah,
but and it's more of a Christian type of narrative, because it's the same way with religion. Either you're religious or you're the devil, you're wrong. It's a
let me
replica.
yeah, let me go ahead and throw several things out here because this is beautiful. I love this conversation. Number one, yes, we took everything too far. There's what's his name? Winston Churchill had a great quote. It says Americans can always be counted on to do the right thing
Hmm.
after they've exhausted every other option.
Every other option.
Right? We have to let that pendulum swing all the freaking way
Hmm.
before we say, no, 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 and we yank that sucker back, right? And that's what's really happening is not just those narratives, but because it was like sort of like globalism versus populism, right? The elites versus the people, where
Hmm.
because the United States didn't have any sort of competitor on the world stage for a very, very long time, we basically had access to everything in the world, and we just sucked that stuff up to the top of the elite, right? And they had narrative control, they had top-down power, they could do whatever the heck they wanted, right? That broke when Elon Musk brought Twitter,
Hmm.
right? They no longer had that control, and that's completely changed everything, right? Because we're able to actually do stuff. The other thing I would say is it's not that 10%, right? If they are completely intolerant and everything else, they can absolutely ruin everything. And that's exactly what happened. People aren't that sensitive. They're not that. It's really not. But you got this 10% that just blows it up everywhere, right? And what has it done?
Everything too.
Right. It's all over social media. It's all over radio media. It's just hammered from every freaking angle that this is the way it is to be. And the reason why they're that way is because they've been brought up and built, in the space where they don't, it's about emotional pain. It really comes down to that, right? And because they can't regulate their own emotions, because they're coming from this narrative of like it's trauma, they're being made to feel is the way that they see it. I don't control my feelings. Feelings are something that happened to me. Awesome. I can't control it. This hurts. I have to control everyone and everything out there so I don't hurt. And it's just the most toxic thing ever, right? Because then everybody else has to play your game, which is exactly
And
what they've been
everybody's
trying to
walking
do.
on eggshells just to make you feel comfortable, and that is really not how life is. And I
No.
hope that life never becomes where people feel so shamed to even speak truth or life or anything, to where you got to walk on
Right.
eggshells. I was married once, and the worst part of being married for me was having to walk on eggshells, because I
Yeah.
didn't know what was going to be the next explosion. I didn't know what was
Yeah.
going to be the next thing that triggered the next fight. And so now you become a piece of yourself, a fragment of yourself.
Yep.
And then, which long terms works against the greater good of everybody, because now
Yep.
everybody is walking around fragmented, because if I say the wrong thing, it's going to hurt
Yep.
somebody's feelings.
And it wasn't that it was going to hurt somebody's feelings. It that because the way things were run and structured, there were real freaking consequences. You could lose your freaking job. You could be censored. You could be canceled. They could crush you, right? Because they actually had that power mechanism because of the influence that they had, and they were being supported by this structure up there, right? As soon as that freaking broke, all of a sudden, poof, that entire thing. Just watch what has happened since November. Everything about that is just falling freaking apart, right? All the Democratic elites, poof, disappeared. Just completely disappeared. Like, what's Barack Obama doing? What have you
Yeah,
heard anything?
everybody
Hillary
just
Clinton?
they
Poof, they just
everybody
boom.
has
They
bowed out at this point.
mm-hmm.
It feels like they're extremely exhausted, and like they don't know what else to do, but they don't want to say, "Hey, y'all, we fucked up, okay?"
Yeah. Well, they
And
can't. They
right.
can't. They can't. Right. Again, that ego. They can't do it. Right. And I think what's happening because it's not just the Democrats; it's that entire like uniparty structure. Right. They've just stepped out and say, "Okay, we just completely lost." And there ain't anything we can do. Like, what the hell are we supposed to do now? Right. And they're basically like, okay, let's hope that they don't freaking come after us and punish us for everything we did over the past 20, 30 years. Right. You look at Biden saying, we're going to pardon you for everything since 2014. Why 2014? Like,
Right.
what was going on then? Like, why
Yeah,
is it the past decade?
what hadn't we seen or known
Right.
something
I
about,
was like, oh my God. The thing that I love about that the most, I actually love that because now they no longer have Fifth Amendment protection. They can be compelled to testify. You will talk and you will tell me all of
Yeah,
it. And if you
because you
don't,
can't get
that's
in, you
perjury.
got
Yeah,
you in
because you
trouble.
can't say
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
I'm like, oh man, right, man. I can see it. Oh, it's gonna be so good.
It's
So
so
so good.
many things that I look at like that. Like I'm kind of glad this is happening. Even when I think about the attorney generals that are being fired, do you know how many complaints that I made about the VA to the attorney general office, and they
Yeah,
did
yeah.
not do nothing at all? And I'm talking about
I know.
valid complaints. And you know what they do? They address the things that they see that can be blown up, and then they try to minimize everything else. And they,
Yep,
we gonna work on it, but we ain't gonna tell them
yep.
that we acknowledge that we're working on something they brought to our attention. We're just gonna do it
Right.
quietly. So it becomes to where those positions are really ineffective if you're not actually doing something with the information.
Yep.
And so why are we gathering information to just sit on it? It just doesn't make sense.
Because it's not that whole structure, that whole thing that kind of came about over the past 15, 20 years is all about protecting their own.
The bottom line.
Guy by the name of Mike Benz, former State Department guy, was in the first Trump administration, done a lot of work on the whole censorship, disinformation. Guy's amazing. He's brilliant. One of the things he said was he had this whole narrative like protecting our democracy, protecting democracy. And he pointed out really brilliantly, it's like when they say that, they don't actually mean democracy in terms of voting. No, they're talking about the democratic institution. They're talking about the institution protecting the institution, right? Because that was their center of gravity when it comes to power. And so everything that these people have been doing, everything these structures were built was to protect their own, right? So
When
they're
I
not going to take action on anything that goes up against that.
no
They're just
no
not.
when I think about, so in 2016, after I had my bowel nicked from the VA and ended up with sepsis, I took myself to the Capitol. Me and my children went to the Capitol, and we did all the little tours that they had available. And the one thing that stands out or stood out to me most and still stands out is in there they sit you in a little room, auditorium, and they play a video. And in the video, I think I recorded it. I have to find it if I did. They literally say this whole thing was an experiment. I mean, like, it's plain and simple. This was an experiment to see how things would go. So right now, we're still living in an experiment. They don't know how the wind is going to carry the fire that they've lit. They just
Nope.
know that it's lit. And even, I hate to say it, but even when I think about the fires in California, it puts me in the mindset of Tulsa, of all of these places that were strategically destroyed and then taken over and kind of reshifted. Now, I'm not saying that they did it initially on purpose, but some of the fires seem a little bit more intentional, and it felt in my soul, it just felt like, man, this just looked like something that the United States did before a few times.
Well, I'm not a big conspiracy guy, and part of the
Hmm.
reason why I'm not is because I spent so much time in the intel world,
And intelligence.
right?
Hmm.
And it's really easy to want there to be this explanation,
Hmm.
right, of why is all this stuff happening, right? And
Hmm.
quite frankly, like a lot of stuff is just freaking random, right?
Right.
Are a lot of the fires in the LA and California these days deliberate? Yes. Why? Not big actors. No, it's people are opportunistic. Oh, I
Yeah.
burn this stuff down. I can go loot the crap out of it. Yep. The
Mhm.
stuff that happens on the back end is again just opportunistic. Oh,
Mhm.
I see an opportunity. Let me go ahead and take
Mhm.
advantage of that sucker, right? So it's just simply it's not a big conspiracy. It's just people following the incentives, right?
Yeah.
But I think the bigger piece is just how much that's exposing the sheer mismanagement and the sheer
Mhm.
corruption
Mhm.
and just the
Mhm.
sheer like these people at the top did not give a flying F about anybody beneath them beyond what they could do to use them to
Mhm.
keep themselves in power,
Mhm.
right? Look at the freaking pandering that happens every single 4 years,
Yeah.
right? Just hey,
And
oh my
it's
god, it's
terrible. It's
terrible. Yeah, yeah,
terrible.
yeah.
Oh my God, it's terrible.
Yeah.
I
But
hate
they
it.
fundamentally didn't care. They didn't freaking
Mhm.
care. It's like a modern day aristocracy and monarchy.
Mhm.
We're at the top. We know everything. The rest of y'all are serfs. You serve us, and we don't really care because at least back in the day, you had that like nobody's obligate, right? Where if you're at the top, you took care of those beneath you because it's your responsibility. These people had none of that. They didn't give
Yeah.
it. They didn't care. They never have. And just like you're seeing that play out in every single blue state period, and it's just a freaking disaster.
Mhm.
Fortunately, like one of the things I got to give Trump credit for this time around is like, man, he started working very early on about that transition, what he's going to do. And if you look at all of his nominations, every single person that he's nominating has very specific characteristics. Number one, they're all really capable,
Mhm.
period. Number two, every single one of them has been wronged by the organizations they're now leading, right? They know where the freaking bodies are buried.
Yeah.
And they're extremely principled people of saying, I want to clean this stuff up. Awesome. So they screwed you over. You know exactly where the bodies are buried. Get to
Mhm.
it. And just like that is going to have such a huge effect, right?
I
Hegseth
think
is a great example.
my favorite thing about the Trump administration, before we get back into your military,
Yeah.
um, my favorite thing is the amount of exposing of what is really underlying that is going on. And I think that he was
Yeah.
the best candidate for that because he's not a politician. He never
Nope.
been around. He don't know what's supposed to how he doesn't know how to play show horse. All he knows is dog and fight. Like he
Oh, he's
doesn't.
a bruiser.
So and because of that, I appreciate the dismantling of what is not working anyway. Everybody complains about this is not working. Everybody complains about how it's never
Everybody at the
worked.
everybody at the bottom of the pile working fine for the guys at the top. One thing I would say is like his focus on transparency is going to be the single most transformative thing that happens.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at like South Africa, the apartheid ended, right? You had that whole like truth and reconciliation of like, okay, we're just going to come to the table. Everybody's going to tell what they did. We're just going to lay it out there and we're going to sort it out. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly what's going to happen here in the U.S. over the next few years. Is we're just going to lay all this stuff on the table, right? But it takes somebody who's not married to that existing power structure to come
Mm-hmm.
in and wrecking ball that thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is exactly what not only us but the entire freaking world needs,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Because
and not only for the United States, this wrecking
mhm,
ball needs to platter like because the way that the structure of everything has been built, it has never really been built on the utmost integrity. I mean, it
well,
might have
that's never going to happen,
started
sure.
there. I mean,
Well,
it may the intentions may have been good in the beginning.
sure.
But what we know is that when people reach empowered positions,
Mhm.
the intentions are still there, but the reality sets in. And no matter how great you thought you was going to be able to change this or do that, 9 times out of 10, when you are put in that position, the reality of what is capable sets in, and then you realize, and then most times you just fall in line with everything else.
Yep. And I think that again, you talked earlier about people playing the game. That's what we had here in the U.S. for a very long time. Just people playing the game, keep themselves doing their thing, yada yada yada. Right? Politicians are enriching the crap out of themselves, insider trading, all this other stuff. It was a mess, sheer corruption. Right? And one of the things I was talking about with a friend of mine is that it's kind of like a natural sort of predator prey ecosystem kind of thing, right? Where if you look at like Russia or China, massively corrupt, right? But it's kind of like the mafia. You can take your 10%, but don't get greedy. There are these
Right.
Hi, I'm Dr. Casey, not your typical clinical doctor. I am an ordained minister, but not your typical minister. I am also a certified life coach, love coach, sex coach, solution focused coach, transformation coach, and more. I have a whole lot of information that I would like to help you grow with. And I hope that soon I can help you be the best you that you can be. Confidence, spirituality, and purpose. That's wholeness, complete.
like naturally reinforcing stuff at the top where they like kept each other in check where it was okay, right? And because of communism, they had a real emphasis on taking care of the people, right? So if you look at Russia and China, everything's messy, yeah, but not nearly like it was here, right?
Right.
In the U.S., you've never had that check and balance. We've always been, oh, there's no corruption, we don't do that sort of thing. It's like
Mhm.
because we've got that like lie narrative that we had, there's
Mhm.
no check and balance in place, right? So they just ran freaking wild, and they didn't have access to just the U.S. or the Europe. No, they had access to everything in the freaking world, which is why we've been just like sticking our nose at everything, right? It's like, oh, we're just gonna take it all over. It's all ours, it's like, right? But once you get somebody in there that isn't playing that game, because for all of his faults, you know, DJD is a businessman. There's a certain etiquette there that you play by, right? There's certain rules you play by, and he's coming about it from that perspective where you if you're at the top of your game, the business game, you freaking did some really good stuff. Like you are
Yeah.
good at your job. You freaking made, you built something, you created something, and you had to do it relatively clean.
Mhm.
Because if you're not doing it clean, you've got competitors that'll keep you in check,
Yeah. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
that natural
Mhm.
thing, right? Where if you're a fraud, man, they will find that stuff. You look at
Yeah.
Theranos, you look at
Yeah.
all this.
Mhm.
Someone would like
And
dig
it's
in. It's
only a
like, what are
matter
you
of
up to?
time.
Only a matter of time. Very self-correcting, right? Within limits, there's problems there too. There always is, but
Mhm.
that's I think that's the other thing is like it's human nature is human nature. We're never going to get it right. We're
Mhm.
greedy. We've got all this stuff. We're human. We make mistakes. That's is what it is. Every system is going to break. You're going to take it to its natural limit. You're going to see where the flaws are. That thing's going to fall apart, and then you're going to build a new one with these old lessons, right? And I think that's what the process is that we're going through right now. We've broken. You know, you had this competition between like globalism and populism. Populism won. Globalism's dead. But there's a transition period that's going to be messy,
Mhm. And a
and then
lot
we're
of
going to see
people,
what the
I,
next
I think,
competition is.
a lot of people don't realize how restructuring anything is going to be messy because you have to figure out what needs to go, what needs to stay. You have to do so much analyzing of the information, and some of it can't be analyzed until you displace it, remove it, and see, okay, was it effective or was it not effective? And we've gone again so long in this cycle of the same thing to where the checks and balances aren't even checks and balances, because who
Nope.
is checking the balances when everybody
Nobody.
is trying to just play the game and get ahead? So it is, we'll do just enough to make people feel okay about it, and then we'll keep doing what we really want to do instead.
Yep.
And it's crazy, because a lot of people can't see through the fog. They are so caught up in the fog that they don't even realize what's really going on versus the perception of what's going on.
Well, and a
Okay.
lot of that comes down to information flow. But what I
Yeah.
would say is, like, you talked earlier a little bit about like AI and purpose, and I think that's where the next, like, not fight, but competition. There's going to be that's where the next space is, right? Because we used to have this narrative, the American dream. You go to college, you do your thing, you get a good job, yada yada, right? That broke 20, 30 years ago. That hasn't been really a thing since the 90s, right?
Right.
That sucker's just really not worked, right? My generation was pretty much the last one that it worked for, and we just basically had to make it work because nobody was going to let
Right.
it work. Growing up in Kansas, I had this powerful advantage where 99% of people there, just like, they just want a job, they want to live, they're not looking for big purpose, right? They're living in life, and it's perfectly fine, and they're enjoying it, and they're happier than I am. I have no idea why. It works fine. Like, I don't know how you people do that, but like, good for you. Like, it sucks. It's like, I kind of hate the fact that you're happy and I ain't, and I'm miserable. But we were kind of sold this thing of go out there, change the world, yada yada. And especially with social media, everybody's kind of like looking for this big global impact. Like, you got to change the world. It's like, no, you freaking don't. No, you freaking don't. Think local. Think small. You're going to have a bigger impact and more satisfaction if you just shrink your world to like what's actually matters. The AI versus people thing is going to like accelerate that in the extreme, because the people who are developing AI, a lot of these tech, Silicon Valley tech people, don't really care about people. Normal people they don't care about. Like, they're completely invisible. They have no idea what that, right? So essentially they think, oh, well, we just do this AI, and everybody who's like us is going to be kicking butt and taking names and take over the world, and then we just like kind of get rid of the rest of it,
Right.
right? Robots, everything else, we're going to get rid of. But and that's going to be that same sort of like globalist populist conflict again.
Yeah,
You know,
it'll be just a cycle through another version of it. I always
yeah,
say I think there are different versions of me. And of course it's not me. It's only one me, but you can meet
yes,
somebody that has similarities to me, and that
yep,
is a version of who I could possibly be. But
sure,
until you get the actual thing, it's the different versions will never be the same. But I think that I'm really kind of excited to see what happens over the next 4 years. I want to say a child of disruption because I am the person, I've always been the person that spoke up. I've always been the
yep,
person that, and this is wrong. And everybody is saying it's wrong, but I'm the one that's going to say, wait, now
yep,
I'm letting you know that we know. Now they might be scared to speak,
yep,
but I'm the voice of the people that's going to say, hey, this is wrong. And so I am excited to see, um, what good trouble really means, because a lot of people use that term good trouble from John Lewis, and then
yep,
they any type of trouble, anything that tests the waters of what isn't working, they're like, oh no, that's bad trouble. No, this is still good trouble, it just looks a little bit different.
Well, it's this idea of creative destruction,
Mhm.
right? You got to clear out the old, right? You got to
Mhm.
do that, right? But more than that, when things are working well enough, nobody asks questions.
Right.
It's only when things break that everybody goes, oh, wait a second, what's going on here, right?
Mhm.
And things have been so broken for so many people for so long that have never had the visibility and voice, which is why this thing kind of like feels like it kind of blew up out of nowhere. So no, this has been going on the whole
Yeah, this
time.
is brewing. Mhm.
This has been brewing for a long time. Like, probably 60, 70, 80% of people out there, this just not, it's not worked for. It hasn't worked for a long time. And that's kind of that reckoning that's come. But I really think this idea of getting back to truth and transparency,
Mhm.
right? If we're just honest with ourselves about what the reality is, we can get anywhere we want to be.
Mhm.
If you look at like evolution, this is something that a guy by the name of Brett Weinstein is an evolutionary biologist. He talked about us going through this idea of like cultural speciation. We basically had these two species of cultures here in the U.S. that competed, and like one of them won, right? We humans have won the evolutionary game here on the planet. We won. So now the entire game of human evolution is between like systems and stories and narratives, right? What society should look like, what religion should look like, how do we need to conduct ourselves, right? And so that's that natural thesis antithesis thing that's kind of playing out. Communism versus capitalism, globalism versus populism, AI versus humanity, right? Tech versus humanity, or like science versus faith is a good way to look at it as well. That's going to be the next one. I honestly think that humanity and faith is going to win because fundamentally, this world is not just 3 dimensions plus time. I'm sorry, there's more to it, right? And so we have to place everything here in the context of that larger order. And technologists don't understand that. They can't get that. So they're only focusing on this. And because they're only focusing on this, they're missing a bigger piece. They will always miss that bigger piece. And they're going to lose because of it. But it's going to be a fight. It's going to be messy. I don't think the Democrats are going to have anything realistic for the next 8 to 12 years. There's nobody on that side that has anything near the chops of like a JD Vance or a Tulsi Gabbard. Like they're going to clean the clock out of whoever comes up on there, right? So it's going to be a good 10 to 12 years before they actually get their act together and actually have anything to really offer.
I think the whole system needs to be reconstructed. I think that having senators and congressmen that are in office for 40 years is insane. I think that there should be a term period. I want to say 8 years, but 8 years might not be long enough to really make change.
12
But
to 16. 12 to 16, I think would be good enough, right?
yeah,
Because
yes,
you got it like first 3 years, you don't know what the heck you're doing anyway.
right.
8 years is not enough. And
Mm-hmm.
you're not really, you've got to have the institutional knowledge. You've got to have that backbone, right? One of the things I really loved about my time in the military is the Air National Guard squadron I supported was F-16s and F-22s, and they moved from Richmond down to Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, where the big Air Force squadron was. And one of the things that was very important about that is these guys in the Guard are there for 16, 20, 30 years. These guys are lifers. And so they've been combat pilots for freaking ever. In big Air Force, you rotate through stations like what, every 2, 4 years? So you don't have that stability. So what was really powerful is like, okay, the Guard guys are the institutional backbone and that stability and that continuity while these other guys are coming in and doing their thing and rotating out. So they're getting this the powerful experience of their knowledge and the background and all that stuff. You got to have that. You have to have that on an institutional level. It's necessary.
It
But
is.
if you don't get them out of there, eventually you get that calcification. Exactly. Yeah.
It erodes the whole foundation of what you're trying to build. Like good intentions, bad follow through. So
100%. Go for it.
you mentioned what you liked most about your experience in the military. What is the thing you like least?
The financial side of it, fundamentally, right? I'm an E4 making $1,400 a month, right? Sure, I got my housing taken care of. Sure, I get a bit of subsistence for bonuses for food, right? But I got a wife, I got a kid, got child support for another kid. There ain't any money, right? I was living in Hawaii at the time. Everything's expensive as hell, right? We're on WIC. We're on WIC.
In the
I'm
military.
fully employed. I'm working a full-time job in the military. What the heck? What the heck? Right? Sure, the retirements or benefits are great if you manage to spend 20 or 30 years in.
Or
Right?
if you get
Not many people
disabled
do. If you
and
get
have
disabled,
a
especially these
lifelong
days,
problem.
and we'll leave the VA side of it out because that's a freaking mess. Hex is going to clean that up. He's on it. Like my thing is like it's all going to get taken care of. It's going to get fixed, right? It's going to be a minute, but it's going to get fixed. But while you're in, man, like the stress and the pain and just that these people have to freaking deal with in the junior enlisted ranks, especially, like man, and even once you get up into like the mid NCO ranks and stuff like that, junior officers, same kind of thing, better off, same kind of struggles, right?
Right.
How the heck you're supposed to do anything with 2 or 3 grand a month,
I mean, but that's what
right?
keeps you. That keeps you bound. It keeps you stifled. It's kind of like everything else that we just say. They do just enough to where you feel like because I went in at 17 as a 17-year-old getting 13, $1,400 a month. It seems like a lot. And then not having to pay bills is actually more of a crutch than anything, that part of the military is totally unhelpful. It is totally makes you codependent, and it becomes a culture shock when you get out
Yes,
and you're trying to transition into actual living as a civilian, because you got real
100%.
bills that you might not have had before. You have real life situations that the military does not allow you to see because of the rose shaded glasses.
Yep, yep. And I wouldn't necessarily say they don't do anything to fill the gap in knowledge in terms
Hmm.
of life skills.
Hmm.
They really
Hmm.
don't. They
It's
don't
just
care.
soldier, soldier, soldier.
Soldier, soldier, soldier. And the thing is, a soldier, an airman, a marine, a sailor is a person first.
Hmm.
And their life outside of that 9 to 5 in the freaking office doing your thing or on the field and doing it, outside of that, that thing has such a huge freaking impact in terms of
Hmm.
effectiveness, warfighting capability, readiness, and everything else. Why the hell we're not doing more
Hmm.
to educate these people on like how to actually live life?
Yeah,
Why that
financial
is not part
stability,
of
all of those
financial
things, because
stability, like
that in
relationship
itself,
stuff.
even when you talk about your situation and the thing that you like the least, when you think about just learning to manage finances, it's the same thing for professional athletes and stars and people that come into money. They have zero clue on how to manage what they've got. And now have the potential, most likely, to lose everything or end up and not have anything, despite how they could have made 500 million in their career, and guess what,
And they
they will
walk away
have
with nothing.
nothing to show for it. And it
100%.
is it's a disservice not only to those people but to their fans as well, because a person that's leading you and don't without knowledge, they can't lead you too far. So when you go and you become a fan of somebody, you're looking at their whole the whole structure of who they
Yeah.
are. And when they have all these flashy things, but it's all on credit, or and what I
You
learned is
just
that
see the front.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's all you see. And so I think that that's probably my least favorite thing about the army. I loved being in the army. It was great for a 17-year-old female who needed some structure in her life and
Yep.
was okay with discipline. I never
Yep.
had a problem with discipline. I actually kind of joined the military for the discipline portion of it
Yep.
because I needed structure. So I think that I always say I would recommend it to a young person that felt lost or they didn't know what they wanted to do and they needed some kind of structure to get their life going in the right track, because it has long-term benefits.
Oh yeah.
It's just a lot you have to live through to get to the long-term benefits.
Man, I think that if we just took the time, and it's not just about finances, it's about how to live life, how to be an adult, what the reality is, right? Look at all these kids that get freaking married, 17, 18, 19, 20-year olds. No idea what they no idea what
They
they're
don't
doing.
even know who they are
They don't
yet.
know. No, they don't. Exactly. And if we just took the time in the military, you got these, you can tell them to do whatever the hell you want to. Sit down, learn,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
If we just taught people how to live life, if we just taught people how to be adults, then there'd be so much problems that we wouldn't have. These kids would
Right.
be so much better position moving forward, right? But we don't take the time to do it right. And it's a freaking shame.
So, what was your biggest takeaway from your military service, and why did you end up getting out?
Well, I got out of the Marine Corps because they didn't have any slots for Russian linguists. There's only so many slots. They didn't have one. And like I said, I wasn't particularly good at being a Marine. So off I went. I went and joined the Air National Guard because I needed to stay in that intel world. Like I couldn't get away from it. The thing that I took away the most from the military was that just focus on this is a situation, this is what needs to be done, just get it done. Right? Embrace the suck. That phrase was
Right.
just embrace the suck. Yep, this sucks 100%. There's nothing, it's going to be miserable, and do it anyway.
Hmm.
You can moan and complain as much as you want along the way, right? That is my right as an enlisted person. I get to moan and complain, and I'll do it anyway, right? You get to tell me what to do, I get to moan and complain, and I'm going to do it anyway, right? But
Hmm.
just that willingness to say, okay, this is the reality that I'm facing. No matter how bad it is, no matter whose fault it is, this is the reality I'm facing. Great. How do I get from here to where I need to go?
Yeah.
Right? And I don't care what's in between. I will go over, under, around, straight, freaking through. I don't care. I'm gonna get it done.
And the key words is no matter who's to blame or who's at fault, I'm gonna get it done.
I'm gonna get it done.
What was your transition like going from military to civilian life?
Man, getting out of the Marines, went back to college, tried to get in the whole like finance international business thing, and just like realizing like, man, I cannot sit here and care about widgets. I freaking can't. Right, bartending, waiting tables again, just kind of make ends meet. Realizing just like this is not it. That's kind of why it got me in the guard. A couple years after that was when I threw up my resume online, said I got to get the heck out of Kansas again, and got picked up for the contracting jobs in DC. And it's because I got my clearance in the military.
What makes it
That
easier?
was my golden my golden ticket, right? So the transition was easy. You know, leaving the guard was very much a situation where like I'm going down 1 week in a month, a couple weeks a year, doing really nothing,
Hmm.
right? Paperwork and going ahead and giving a couple briefings that nobody really cares about. I'm like, this is a waste of my time. This is a
Right.
waste of my time, right? I'm not doing anything important. And I was having such a bigger impact in my day job, right? I actually put in, thought about becoming an officer there, but I was going to have to go back for another like year and a half of training and stuff. I'm not going to freaking spend my time doing that. That's a waste. I'm sorry. I'm out. So yeah, it was just very much a recognition of I can have a bigger impact elsewhere. It's a waste of my time.
What are your goals moving forward?
The work I'm doing now as a hypnotist, I've figured out some stuff about how the mind works that really you can have a huge impact, right? Very much about changing your entire view of who you are in your past from a negative one to a positive one.
Hmm.
That whole like neuroticism, negative self image, negative view of the world is the root of like 90% of our problems. If we can just correct that, then everything becomes easier. And it turns out it's really not that hard to fix it. Okay, I wrote a book called Winter Peace, How to End Inner Conflict, Make Success Inevitable, walks you through the whole process to get you in that space where fundamentally your emotions aren't pain anymore. They become questions. You get to engage with them. They help solve problems. And then
Hmm.
everything kind of becomes inevitable after that. My goals right now are to get that out there to the world, make that more available, kind of prove out what I can do impact wise with the work I do. Because I really believe it can have a huge impact, especially in the veteran community with things like PTSD, general anxiety disorder, the depressive disorder, everything we're freaking dealing with that we don't have good solutions to. Right? Psychedelics are a step in the right direction because you start playing with that subconscious mind a bit, making those big changes, but you don't have any ability to target that.
Hmm.
Right? Hypnosis allows you to go down there and target that more directly. Right? And that's exactly what I figured out how to do is target this stuff, these belief structures directly, figure out how they came to be, disprove the old one, build a new one that actually works, right? So that's really where my focus is. Get this out there in the world, prove it, validate it, and then start teaching people how to do it because fundamentally it's the easiest freaking thing in the world once you understand the framework. Everybody who's a therapist or whatever has the basic skills. You know how to ask questions, you know how to put the puzzles together, you know how to reframe. Just a different tool set, different framework, and you create something really powerful.
Would you recommend your family members or any of your family members to go to the military?
My little brother actually joined right after I did. Pissed my mom off to know. He was like, "What? This is entirely your fault." I'm like, "Yeah, it kind of is." But he was kind of like you. He was kind of lost. Didn't really know what he was doing. And like afterwards, man, financial advisor crushing it. Right. I think that up until November, I would not have said. I would have said, "Don't go." Right. The
Hmm.
way we're being used for a very long time, and the way we've been treated and stuff after that, and how we're taking just abominable.
Hmm.
Nowadays, yes, 100%, because it's back to being about patriotism. It's back to
Right.
being about serving the nation and being about serving the country in the best possible way. It's about purpose and mission again. And that is what the military is best
It's
at.
supposed to be about.
We're
Hmm.
not using them in crappy ways anymore. That's done, right? That's over. Back to mission, back to purpose, back to focus, back to working for that greater good.
Yeah.
And that I would say, yes. But it has to be a calling.
Yeah,
You
it's
have to be
definitely
called.
something that you need to be drawn into. It
Yes.
cannot be something that you are doing by force or fear because you won't have the wherewithal to really get it. Lastly, and our final question. This has been amazing talking to you as an intelligence person because you have a different way of thinking, and it's not common that people think on the intelligent side versus the emotional side. So I really appreciate this conversation before I ask you this last question.
Well, thank you.
So, What advice would you give veterans and or active duty members of the military?
What I would say is a lot of us get in the military because we don't know what to do, and the military gives you this very clear path, a very clear story. Just do this thing, and this is how you rise through the world. Perfect. You have to start looking at your why. What is values? What is driving you? What actually is you? Because if you're walking in there, having the structure, having the story, that becomes your life. And as soon as you lose that, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you have to look at those deeper things as why do I need to prove this to myself? Why do I need somebody to tell me who I am? Right? Why do I need somebody to define me from the outside in? Because if you start defining yourself from the inside out, now you're moving through the world in a very different way. You're not dependent on that structure. And that is what you need to do to understand not just how you're doing things in the military, but how you do things after. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes work. That takes work. A lot of people don't want to look at that part of themselves. They don't like it. They'd rather be anything else. But again, look at the reality, own point A, and you can get to point B. But you gotta own what point A is first.
It's so crazy that you say knowing and having a definition of self on any level when dealing with the military, because when I got out, that's what I struggled with. I struggled with feeling like they had abandoned me, like I was lost and confused, which led me, nothing is wrong with going to church, but it led me to joining a church community. And for the most part, most religious settings are very cultish, and they're very mind controlling and very, you don't have a sense of self. So to
Yep.
go from the military of not having a sense of self, then to a church not having a sense of self and feeling like I'm trying to just piece myself together, and then you make those things your whole identity. So when those things are no longer your identity, or the things are not working, or you feel like it's draining you more
You're
than it's
done.
helping you, you feel
You're done.
completely lost. And then that's
Yep.
when all of whatever you had been putting band-aids on to feel better, all of those things kind of collide, and it creates this because now the glass is broken, and you have to figure out who you are outside
Boom.
of religion, outside of the story that you've told yourself, outside of everything that has happened to you, outside of who you actually are. And then the tougher part is really breaking down what has happened and how it has changed you to create the person that you have
Yeah.
become from survival, because most people are the survival mode them and not the authentic version of them, and the
Yes.
survival mode you is 30 times worse than the actual version of you that you would be if you were at peace and
Yeah.
hope.
Let me throw this out there because I can explain that whole process. I can tell you exactly why that's happening. Okay. Fundamentally, we look at the world through two lenses simultaneously at all times, the rational logical one and the emotional one. Okay. And it's not that one is better than the others. That's not how it works. We don't like the emotional conclusion. So we stay over here because this is what we like. This is the answer we like. Right. These feelings that you have of all this like negativity around, like I'm not good enough and other stuff like that, that's what drives you to find a way to prove that wrong,
Hmm.
to build that external identity. But the problem is, Ben Shapiro had the thing of like facts don't care about your feelings. I mean, he's right. Gravity works, doesn't care how you feel. Feelings don't care about your facts
Hmm.
because your emotional side of your mind is looking at patterns over time. No one data point matters. So you have to get down and change those emotional conclusions. You cannot do it from the outside in. It must be done from the inside out. Most people don't look at that until everything falls apart.
Hmm.
What I'm saying is, if you're in the space and you have these feelings of like, I'm not good enough, no, 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 that's truth. That is truth. That is actually who you are deep down inside. And that ain't going to change unless you go deep down inside and you fix
And
that.
figure out why. Hmm.
Got to be done on a subconscious level. Not really any other way. But once you do that work, you become unstoppable.
Once you even
You really
start to
do.
trigger the work, once you even just, it's almost like they say, once you learn certain things, you can never go back to being ignorant again. So once you start tapping into your soul, it will almost be a itching, nagging type of feeling to go deeper to figure out, okay,
Yes.
well, if I figure out this small part of myself and got a better understanding, then what else? What else is there?
But that's the beautiful thing is once you bring that stuff inside in line with what you truly are, you are free in a way that nobody else can touch, right? And that is
Right.
what my focus and everything is. And it doesn't take long if you use the right tools because there's only four things
Right.
you got to fix. Got to fix the idea that emotions are pain.
Mhm.
You got to fix the idea that you're the problem because you ain't.
Mhm.
Problems are always out there. Then we
Mhm.
can create healthy self-esteem because if you're broken, you got to heal. Then you don't have value. So now we can create healthy self-esteem, which means you can stop proving it from the outside in. You don't have to prove anything to you anymore. Anybody, not even yourself. And that makes you free. That makes you you because you can actually own what you are. The reason we're trying to get that external thing is we ask ourselves who we are and we don't like the answer. So I got to be something else, which
Mhm.
means you're living a lie.
And even with wanting to be somebody else, it's just a matter of self-acceptance. Guess what? And this would be our final words for this particular episode. Um, the person that you are is who you are created to be. It's who you need to be, despite what you see. A lot of times we deny portions of ourselves thinking that, well, this got to be bad or this is bad. No, you just need to learn how to utilize those portions of yourself. Having an attitude isn't bad. When do you display your attitude is another question. Having a sense of even having a temper isn't bad if you learn how to control and manage your temper, because at the end of the day, you are created for your survival and for thriving. But you have to navigate those emotions so that you find the balance, so that you know when to operate in survival. Because guess what? If somebody is threatening you, whether it's spiritually, financially, physically, emotionally, then you need to, no,
Yes.
that was a little whimperish. You need
Yep.
to,
Yeah. No,
you
you do.
need to you need to
Yeah.
be able to turn that on, as well as when you're in a situation where you're safe and you're loved and
Turn
you're
it off.
cared for and nurtured. You need to be able to say, okay, I have no reason to act this way. And then in situations where you have a reason, but it's inappropriate to act that way at that particular time, you need to learn how
Find
to
a better
say,
way.
you know what? Not right now, but we're going to stick a pin in it and I'll get
Yep.
back to that at some point.
Yep. And the beautiful thing is, a lot of these survival things, a lot of these emotions come up because we haven't sorted that stuff out down there. Once you
Hmm.
do, it's hard to push somebody's buttons when you ain't got any buttons to push, right?
Yeah,
And then those
it's
emotions become,
definitely hard to be triggered
yeah,
when you've addressed your triggers and now you have a safety. It's a
yeah,
safety switch
yeah,
now. I'm not triggered. I got the safety lock on. So guess what? Today you thought you had me, but my safety lock saved me. Okay. Well, again, Ryan, it was so great speaking to you. This has been an amazing, very diverse, and I never thought that we would end up the places that we did, but it's all good for growth because perspective is what really changes everything. Being able to
100%.
sit down and have conversations, whether you agree or disagree. I know our conversation has been very pleasant, but sometimes tough conversations and hearing things that you might not agree with all the time is what helps you grow. And until you're willing to grow, you'll stay in what you know.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation.
I love it. All right, you guys, until next time, thanks for being on Life of a Veteran.
Cheers.
Hi, I'm Casey, Dr. Casey. Welcome to Speaking Freedom. We are happy to have you, and we hope that we are able to help you in every way possible. Have a good evening. If you've enjoyed this video, like, share, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. New episode every Friday.